Ready, let's go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. If I haven't introduced myself to you yet, I apologize for you. My name's Lynn Baker, and I was a lieutenant in Delta 1st to 6th, and but for a very short period of time. I was only there for 6 months, where most of you were there for a long time. And there's certain things I wanted to do and have you here as a group. Originally, we had thought about some formal program that would bore the heck out of you all, and we decided we would let you all do the program. So when I get done with just some information I'm going to pass out to you, we're going to have a round robin, and we'll pass the microphone around to each one of the veterans and let them tell you what they did in Vietnam and what they've done since, and anything they want to say. It's kind of an open floor on that. We've been sitting around with groups that we were comfortable with, that we knew from Vietnam, or that we found this last couple of days that we knew from Vietnam, which is what this is all about. And so now I want you to hear what the rest of them, and I'll bet you a dollar to a dime, or however the term goes, that once one of these guys starts talking, you'll say, wait a minute, that name sounds familiar. I think I know him. And some of the classics is Russ Wright was in here, and I'm talking to some guy, and Chuck comes running up to him, and Krantz comes running up to him and says, Russ, how are you? And Russ, you can see it in Russ's eye. Who the hell is this guy? You know? And then all of a sudden it dawns, and they start realizing. And I, for one, found which platoon I was in. I've been riding around thinking, oh man, it must be 3rd platoon. I don't know who. Somebody told me that in the earlier times.
Len, nobody's paying attention to you.
Oh. I wasn't. I've watched that movie 1,000 times, and I haven't found anything X-rated in it. Yes, sir.
Which part of Vietnam was that?
What part? Yeah, Dale Colley and I wrote back and forth, and I told him that we were on a 21-3 rotation, 21 days in the field, 3 days in the rear. And he said I was 24/7 or 365 or some crap like that, and I got all excited about that. So anyway, we've got some people here I want to recognize. I call them our senior military personnel, and these are guys that went on after most of you went home and hung up and forgot that you were, or tried to forget that you were in Vietnam, because all the people around you didn't want to tell them you were in Vietnam because of the public and reception that we didn't get when we came home. And some of them, or some of us, stayed on either active duty or stayed in reserves or whatever. And first, our senior enlisted person is Command Sergeant Major Mick Erdman. Can you wave your hand or thank you? For you ladies that don't know, Command Sergeant Major is the highest ranked enlisted person unless you're Command Sergeant Major of the Army. And so that's a heck of an accomplishment. And then we have two full-bird colonels, Guy Howerton, Larry Stovall. And I've got a special individual. He's not here, but I want everybody to be aware of it because he apologized, called me Tuesday night and apologized. His house was damaged in the hurricane, and he had a business travel that he had to go on Monday, and so he had to fix his house first, and I fully understand that. And that would be Gary Augustine. And Gary Augustine, I'm sure all of you have heard of Disabled American Veterans. It's one of the largest veteran organization, and he is our national director of the DAV. And he has told me, he says he wants me to put out, and I'll send out an email to everybody, that if you have any problems with VA or any questions or concerns, to contact him personally and make him aware that you're Delta 1st of the 6th, and he personally will take care of you. And he said that's the least he can do. And going along with Gary is Russell Wright. Russell, put your hand up. Okay. Russell is the medic that saved Gary's life. And Gary and Russell got together last week for the first time. And Gary told me that, although he's been the director of DVA and he's been in veterans assistance his whole life, and he said he has been hunting for Russell all this time. And because of this reunion, Russell got a hold of us and Gary got a hold of us, and the names matched up. And Gary was able to contact Russell and tell him thank you for saving his life. So that's, those emotional things is what I think this is all about. And people getting together that didn't know or what happened to all those people. And we're hoping to expand this. I'll go through some numbers with you. This reunion started last December. Pearl and I were out driving around Florida, and we put one and one together and came up with two for the first time in our lives. And those two was Tom Nowak and Paul Uncle. Paul Uncle was my platoon sergeant when I was in 2nd Platoon, and Tom Nowak was my squad leader. And I had found Tom years ago, and through lots of procrastination, Tom lost both legs just like Mr. Cash did. And I have to admit that, it took me 3 years of procrastinating to finally get up, I call it the nerve, to go visit Tom, because I thought Tom's going to be a whining Vietnam vet, and he's going to feel sorry for me and all that crap. And you talk about, and anybody that's met Tom, it will say he's probably the most positive person you will ever meet, and inspire you to move on and do your thing. And Tom was a very successful realtor in Detroit area, lives in Detroit half the year and in Tampa the other half of the year. And but anyway, in that meeting, when the three of us got together in December in Tampa, it was so obvious that the three of us were just, getting so much cool information and answering some of these dumb questions that we've had in our head, or clearing some of the cobwebs that we had in their heads, that we wanted to go on and do something bigger and better. And so that's when we took off and decided that in September of this year we would have a reunion and try and find everyone. And if it wasn't for this next person that I want to acknowledge, John Pugh. John, will you raise your hand? John Pugh, I'm almost positive John Pugh has either talked, emailed, or sat on your lap in the last 6 months. And John has found, personally, has found over 80 of our people. And those people show up with their phone number and their email, if we have them in the booklet, for you can see what we've found. And also in that booklet is the 300 that we have know of that were in Delta First to the Sixth. And we need everybody's help to help us in that area. And we need to expand that number from 300 to 500 to 600, whatever we can. And we have ways of finding people. If you have Social Security number, you can mash that up with current utility records and come up with a current address on those individuals. And we need orders. If anybody here has a set of orders, it's not important to you, but it's very important to us, because if you look at orders, they have Social Security numbers on them. That was our service number. And if you can get us copies of those orders, then we can go ahead and extend it one step further and contact that person. And there's people out there we contact that they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to remember it. They want, you know what I'm talking about. And we all hesitated about the first reunion or getting together. Do I want to, go through this? And you're all going to say on Sunday or Monday when you get ready to leave, thank God I did it. Yeah, that's the way I've done 3 OCS or reunion, and it's very powerful what it accomplishes here. The next person I'd like to acknowledge is Mick Erdman. Mick, raise your hand again, in case they didn't see it the first time. Mick provided, okay. Mick provided, what am I moving?
No, there was,
He covered.
I covered it. There was
man.
something going on behind you, Lynn.
Right.
That was distracting you.
Anyway, no, I want to distract people. I want you to see this cool stuff. Anyway, these are going to be running the rest of the reunion, or until Mick has to go home. But anyway, because...
Yeah,
See,
I don't know
this-
why you have that. No.
I don't have that. That's what I have. It's a screensaver. If somebody knows how to turn off my screensaver, a lot further ahead.
Great. I wondered what
If you notice that, Pearl, tell me, and I'll turn it off. Okay, a couple more things I want to do before I get in the round robin is emphasize finding Delta First to the Sixth. And if there's anybody, Paul Uncle brought in a book over there, and he's got a couple sets of orders in it. These are the classic things that we need to get. And I've had people tell me about, well, they don't, I hear these things, even through my bad hearing, oh, they don't have Johnny on their list. Well, it's your list, it's not my list. So if you know of somebody, and this is the time to do it, write it down on a piece of paper, those people that you don't see on that list, that 300 list, or if there's people you've got phone numbers for or anything, pass it on to me or to John Pugh, and we'll do the rest. So that's the thing I want to emphasize. Anybody got any questions on helping out or finding these other members? Okay. The other thing is we want to go on, instead of just doing what we're doing now with the reunion and whatever, is to extend to writing the history of Delta First to the Sixth. And I've got somebody that told me they were in Delta First to the Sixth, 67 to 69. Well, the colors, the brigade did not get activated until January of 68. And when the brigade got originally activated in January of 68, there was not a Delta company. They First to the Sixth only had A, B, C, and E companies. For some reason, they didn't have a Delta company. We know the first person that was killed in Delta Company was in March of 68. And we know when the colors were retired in November of 71. So we've got a very specific bracket of when Delta Company existed. And so that's, we've got a good cross-section right here. And so we can start figuring out who the different company commanders were, which platoons different people were in. And we just want to expand it more than what we've done so far. Those stories, I threw in a couple of stories that we've received that we put in the booklet. If you got a story of an incident that you were involved in, please write it up and send it to me. And it doesn't have to be anything formal. It's just, you know, something that you remember that happened and you'd like to share with everybody. And there's no reason that we can't continue to send out group emails with this information as we find it. So, if anybody got any questions before we start the round robin? Okay, I'll start with myself. Like I said, I went through, I enlisted as an enlisted person. I went to Officers Candidate School. And I'll be honest with you, I went to Officers Candidate School only because the guy with the butter bar wasn't doing anything and the sergeant was working. And so I said to myself, man, that's what I want to be. I want to be that kid with the butter bar. And of course my sergeant told me I was, you know, crazy, lazy, blankety blank and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I want to be. And so anyway, I originally was going to go to engineering OCS. They sent me to engineering AIT. And then they canceled my school. And they gave me a choice of going to Vietnam as a laborer, combat engineer is really a laborer, going to Vietnam as a laborer, E3, or go to infantry OCS. And my mind said, good, Vietnam will be over in 6 months, so I'll go to infantry OCS. So of course, then I went to Panama and the rest. I spent 4 years active duty, 26 years reserve. And then I was recalled to active duty in 2006, and I went to Kuwait as a senior planner for the Iraq surge that was going on when we went from 15 to 20 brigades, spent 14 months doing that, and once we did the reverse planning, then we were let go home. And in civilian life, I was all my life, for 29 years, I was superintendent of the water, I worked for the water department, ended up being superintendent of the water department in Tucson, Arizona. Now I'm a genealogist and a golfer sometimes and a fisherman sometimes and retired, period. Pearl and I both retired in 2002 from the city of Tucson, and we live in Arkansas now. And John, you're next.
John McEnany. Was
Want to stand up so everybody can see who everybody
Oh,
is?
that'd be great. And I don't have to move this.
John McEnany, served with Delta Company versus 6 from 1970 to 71. And these gentlemen here served with me. That was my RTO right there who broke me in on the RTO, on the radio. And Phil Trimpey, our medic, outstanding medic. And I was born in New York City and moved to Pennsylvania. And I worked as an iron worker for 40 years. And my bones feel it. And I didn't hear about the Delta Company reunion until I got a phone call from John Pugh. And he kind of, come on down. You're retired, come on down. And here I am. I flew into Branson, and this is great. That's about it.
I'm Phil Trimpey, and I was drafted twice. I was drafted in October, and they sent me a letter 2 weeks before I went in and said, disregard that letter, because we're going to have a lottery. So I watched the lottery, and I was number 27. My birthday was number 27 that was pulled out of there. So I knew I was going to go. So in March, I went back in, took basic in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and AIT in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And then I was sent to Vietnam. Went over as infantry, and when I got to Delta Company, they said, we need medics, and they asked for volunteers. So I thought, well, I was tired of carrying 60 ammo, so I thought, well, I'll try it. So I went ahead and told them I'd do it. So they sent us in for like 2 weeks and went over all the medical stuff, IVs and bandages, and then they sent us back out in the field with 2 medical bags and M16. So I was their main medic for most of the year. We had other medics that came and went. That was August of 70. And I got there just right after the big incident. So they were really short on a lot of people then. So in March of 71, we lost our lieutenant, and I went home for 2 weeks. And when I came back, Bill Bauman and I were sent to Da Nang for 2 months, and we pulled guard up there for 2 months. Then we came back and went back out in the field with our group, and I stayed there up until 2 weeks before I went home. And those 2 weeks, I went to LZ Bayonet and pulled guard up there. And I came home, got 30 days off, and sent back to Fort Polk, Louisiana. I was put out in the Kisatchie National Forest at Peason Ridge, Tiger Ridge they call it, and helped with the training the new recruits. And I just hit it just right where I got 4 months early out. I made it E5 sergeant by the time I got out. So I actually didn't spend quite 2 years in, but that's about it.
My name's Paul Stow, and yeah, I served with these 2 guys. I got drafted in February of 1970 when the lottery came out. I can't remember, my number was like 7 or 19 or something, so I knew I was going to go. Went to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training, then went to Fort Ord, California for the AIT. Never been so cold in my life as being out training at night out at Fort Ord. And then after 30 days at home, I went to Vietnam, got there July 10th, did the usual training and stuff, and joined the unit down at the stand-down center where some sappers came in and blew up a couple of buildings. So a couple of us guys that were in the same group, we earned our CIB before we were ever out in the field. And then it was the first mission out on August 14th when, I know other people have heard about it, but there was a lot of injuries that day. And I had relatively minor injuries, but I had shrapnel in my left heel, which wasn't able to walk. I spent time at the 27th Surge, and then I was transferred to Air Force Hospital in Cameron Bay, and then the 6th Convalescent Center in Cameron Bay, and then I returned to the unit in October, spent some time at Dottie until I was able to go back out into the field, and I was only out in the field probably another, I don't know, maybe a month, and then I got a rear job at the Brigade Officers Club, and I was there for 2 or 3 months and couldn't get along with the right people, and was sent back to the unit and sent back out to the field for 4 or 5 or 6 months. And then I ended up getting, I was a radio operator from the platoon level, then to the company level, and then to the battalion level. And of course, the battalion level at that time was in July, and that was interesting duty. And I don't know whether it was a shortage of RTOs or what, but we went from working 8 hours a day to working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you know, it was still better than being out in the field. And we did find time to sleep and still have fun and everything. And then that was a pretty easy time there. And at the time, anybody who had less than 6 months, 4 months, or whatever it was to do in the service when you came back from Vietnam, they would let you out. And so I thought, well, I'm pretty safe here, so I'll extend an extra 2 months. And so I extended it an extra 2 months, and when with about 2 or 3 weeks to go, our new battalion commander decided that the unit was getting soft and we needed to get back into the action. So he moved the battalion tactical operations center back out to the field, where they just blew all the cover off of a hilltop and set down the kind of like a storage building for the TOC, and then moved out to another place. And so on September 6th of 71, I was out in the field. September 11th, I was home back in Iowa and out of the Army. And still remember the first night driving a car, and I was all I could do to make myself turn the headlights on. I was riding with my friends, and they said, "It's dark, Paul, it's dark." I says, "I can't turn my lights on. People will see us." And then a couple of days later, I was buying a car at a car dealer, and the salesman was a friend of mine, and we're sitting there talking the car, had my foot up on the front bumper, and we're chatting. And then this group, I don't know if you're the Pony Express, is a group that goes out and raises money for various causes, and they ride horses and have their little pistols with the blanks in them. I hadn't seen them come, and all I heard was the pop, pop, pop. And the next thing you know, I'm laying on the ground under this car looking up at the salesman and a kind of sheepish grin on my face. And then after that, had a few different jobs, and then in 1977, I got a job with the Postal Service as a part-time clerk, and then I became a substitute roll carrier, and then I became a regular roll carrier, which I did until I retired in 2005. And since then, I've enjoyed retirement. My wife and I bought an RV the day that I retired, and we've been RVing since. And the last 2 years, we've been able to take off in the fall and go south for the winter and come back after the Iowa winter is mostly over with. So, other than that, it's been a great time coming here today. So,
Great.
Morning, I'm Guy Hamilton. I was a lieutenant in Delta Company for about 5-6 months. Then I got pulled and sent to July Defense Command. Source of my commission is ROTC from the Citadel. And I figured when I got done with the Citadel, they're going to send me somewhere for R&R. Instead, they sent me to Vietnam. How many of you all remember what the company Jeep was called, or what the name was on the Jeep? Rabbit Hunters. And we all thought that just was not appropriate for Delta 16. You know, things have changed. They've changed so drastically. I know my son is a lieutenant commander in the Navy Reserves. When he was a lieutenant, back at the beginning of the unpleasantness now, he was responsible for offloading ships in Kuwait, preposition ships. Well, he called home on his satellite phone. How many of y'all remember the Mars calls? He called home on his satellite phone, and he said, "Dad, I don't know about this combat stuff." I said, "Well, what do you mean, son?" He says, "You know, it took the Seabees 3 days to get the air conditioner into our tent. And the Baskin Robbins only has 11 flavors." I hung up. He called back, and I said, I'm going to quit paying my taxes. But you know, we can't let this go. I was so pleased when I heard from Lynn that this get-together was going to happen. Look around you. We're old. We ain't middle-aged, we're old. And there's going to be less and less of us as time goes on. And we have got to keep